Well, I'm a bit lost for words after all that. If I'd known, I guess this morning, if I'd asked the fridge that I had to digest all that today, I would have asked it to rearrange my day and send me somewhere else. It's quite amazing, and I actually think in terms of the transformation is probably the key word, and that if we look at our customers being our visitors, there's a lot of parallels and context we can take out of that. And we too have to think along those terms, not just as ourselves as customers, but with our visitors. So in terms of the technological changes and things that we can do in terms of informing and helping them, I think there's a lot of value. I've got quite a connection with Wairaki, and it's really nice to be back here. I used to come here quite some time ago, well, not that long ago. It was very famous for its New Year's parties. I'm sure a few of you might remember Graham Brazier, Dave Dobbin, Dave McCartney, Jordan Luck. We used to come here, and it reminds me a little bit of the Spark ad actually, but the way the guy was dancing, and but we were more like zombies on electrotherapy. And then we staggered across the road and collapsed in the Wairaki golf course somewhere and woke up in the morning. It's nice to see this place has developed quite significantly since then. I'd also like to take the opportunity actually to congratulate the guys that were in the TEC Awards last night, the finalists and especially the winners. But I do have something I was a little bit disturbed about, and to be honest, Steve Shearer, unfortunately that's the image that's now imprinted in my brain, and I cannot unsee it. And I guess the piece that really worries me is the fact that it seems to fit. And that's even more disturbing, I think. Right, I'm here today to talk to you about, we should get serious, to talk about the growing air connectivity with New Zealand and what we're seeing. So the first part of the presentation will be, I'd just like to create a bit of a theme and a bit of a setting, so before we move into the capacity that's coming over the next 12 months and across summer, which, to be honest, if I had to just cover that off, it'd be 5 minutes, and I've been told I've got to talk for quite some time. And so we'll fill the story in a little bit more. It's quite interesting, and I think some of you may have seen some of the slides before, but it needs to create the background to why things are happening and why we're seeing the capacity that is coming online, because it's not just something random, it's been building for some time. And I think one of the keys is that in the last 20 years, tourism's actually been growing consistently, about 5.6% KGAR. It's had its hiccups, and for about 10 years it was flat, about mid-2000s through to about 2012. So, and that was flat for various reasons, price of fuel, terrorism, pandemics and things like that. So, and we've seen it really kick away. Also, over that time, we probably saw an economic shift from Europe across into Asia. So, where it was decreasing and it was flattening and decreasing off a little bit, we probably were saved a little bit by the growth in the Asian markets, and we've really seen China kick away in the last few years. So overall, there's quite a solid industry, and it has been growing consistently for quite some time. Looking to the future, we know tourism 2025, 3 million to 5 million customers by visitors by 2025, 32 to 45,000 international air services. So that's another 13,000 that we need over the next few years. We all know about the hotel accommodation, infrastructure around hotel rooms. We need another 25,000 that's come out of some of the research that's being done to accommodate with what we need. And we don't need to dwell too much on the infrastructure. There was a good debate yesterday, and there's work being done to understand what we need, what the problem is, and then how we solve that. Just want to talk about what Auckland Airport does, its approach to growing the tourism markets. We look at airline capacity. We do some pretty sophisticated modelling around that, and I'll touch on this very shortly as to how that works. In market, we do research. We look at what customers are doing. We look for a gap. We don't do what Tourism New Zealand does. We tend to complement what that is and then work alongside, especially in markets where there may be a quality issue, there may be front of cabin issue, areas of building business class travel and things like that. So we tend to niche and target and then help the industry offshore move forward onto that space to make profitable airline services, because that's, at the end of the day, is what we need to ensure that we grow capacity and grow our travel markets. And then in New Zealand, we take a role in going where we see these gaps. We've worked with many of you to do some of the programs that we've run, and some of those in the past have been sort of China 101 workshops to learn about the market, what we needed to do to satisfy it here. Then the industry stepped into that space and started doing it as well. So it's those sort of things. We base it all around insight. So the insight comes from our knowledge of the airline capacity, but that's nice to have, but we need to have the market insight as well, and that's where we work with, obviously with NZ Inc., the government agencies, because it's NZ Inc. that's helping us ensure that we fill those aircraft, because we're talking about capacity that's arriving over the next 12 months. We still have to have people on board that filling that capacity, and that has to be a value market, because those airlines won't keep flying unless they are yielding. Same as our hotels, same as all the discussions we've been having. This is a really interesting slide. This is always gets quite a bit of debate and the understanding. So what we do really in this model is we looked across the world and we went, right, what are we needing? What does it look like? So what those figures really mean is through our modelling, and we work out much the same as any consumer program will run. We market size. So we market size those that look like they'd travel to New Zealand, they can't find a flight that they want to get on or an itinerary that will get them here, and we say that's the market size. And so the market size may be 100. And then we go, what's coming, what's on board? And that might be 60. So the underserved piece is the 40. So that's really what we're looking at there. And it's really interesting to see that, and what was surprising for us was using that and putting it across the globe, it actually showed us that we were underserved in nearly all our markets, and quite considerably so in some. And there's various reasons for that, and some of those were the growth in particular markets that was blocking off the flow of our visitors from other traditional markets, and I'll touch on that again very shortly. So really what this slide, this is from Wellington, and what it says is actually that undersupply is starting to fill. So we're starting to see in the last 12 months a lot of growth in the airlines starting to come to New Zealand, and like I was saying, it's a historical issue, because if you look, there was some research I think that around Tourism 2025 that had the rest of the world for the 5 years up to 2013 grew around 4.5% with airline connectivity, and New Zealand grew about 2%. So we're probably seeing, what we're starting to see is actually that gap catching up, and catching up quite rapidly. So we saw about 20% growth in international capacity for Wellington. Similar records, $6.3 million passengers for Christchurch, and I won't go down into the granular detail here, but obviously it's a good time to be in airport. Business is good, and it's a good time to be in the industry across the board. Business is good, as well as some of the pressures that it does put on. For Auckland Airport, we had 15 new routes, 10 new airlines, 1.6 million more international seats, that's both ways, in and out, and there's 1.4 million domestic seats. That's grown, which is important alongside our international visitors to not only to drive around to, but be able to get from A to B by air. I just want to talk about this slide and just explain it, because I touched on it before about, and the China market's a good one to give an example, and how the China market, before we had the more direct services, was coming down through Southeast Asia. It was basically filling anything it could get through to get down, because there was not enough direct services. So what we saw is across the likes of Southeast Asia, it was filling seats through Southeast Asia, it was filling seats through Korea, it was filling seats through across Australia, across the Tasman, which actually was stopping the flows, some of our more traditional markets, European flows coming through. They couldn't get on seats to get down here. And since we've seen the growth in the direct services over the last 3 years, it's jumped nearly 20%, so 81% now of our Chinese visitors are coming on direct services. And we're starting to see a drop off across the Tasman of Chinese travelling across the Tasman, and we've seen it nearly halve across Southeast Asia. So those airlines don't have less people on them. what they actually have is they fill with other flows from like Europe and places like that. And again, we saw, this is just a similar graph showing what's happened across Europe through Southeast Asia. So we've started to see an uptake of probably the key stat, or the key percentages there. We're starting to see growth back through Southeast Asia on the airlines there, the Malaysians, the Thais, the Emirates, and that of our European flow. And if we looked at, I think it was 46 underserved in Germany, 40% out of the UK, so that's good news for us. And we're talking, this is across the year, so. What's new? So this is the piece that we really wanted to have a look at what's coming over summer. So some of these services started during the year, but we didn't have them last summer, so it just touches on, I took a bit of a granular approach to this to just have a quick look at what's going on, because a percentage figure is nice and it's all very good, but in terms of who's coming from where, it's nice to have a bit more granular detail. It means more words, less pictures, but it explains a bit more. And so the key one here out of Americas is really American Airlines and United Airlines. That's a combination of another 305,000 seats. I know that sounds a lot, but remember that is two ways, and it is across the year. And then we've got incremental seasonal increases with our traditional partners across the rest of the year, and those just show the peaks. They're up and down. Increased frequency for summer, and then they drop back around March. Tasman new services, we've seen AirAsia X coming across the Tasman, the Philippines. Air New Zealand's increasing its trans-Tasman services. Into Christchurch, again, it's pretty granular, but we've got an increased capacity across there, and Christchurch is getting the Dreamliners into Perth. Southeast Asia new services, Qatar, Doha, Auckland non-stop for those of you that like ultra long haul and enjoying a long haul flight. It's now beating the Dubai Auckland service, and that's up gauging. That service has gone really well. That was another really interesting example of an airline that was looking at going, how much would a direct service affect their Tasman services? And when they started it had no effect at all, because actually when they stop in Australia and they fly across the Tasman, they're more a Tasman service rather than a long haul service from their international markets. So actually it didn't affect them too much at all. And again, they're carrying other passengers, like I said, which is less Chinese and more from other destinations. Then we've got Thais upgrading 4 per week. Another thing that we're seeing now is the new aircraft come online, the new technology. We're starting to see new aircraft replacing some of the old A340s and the A350s, and what that is actually it's a really good upgrade for the customer. The new aircraft are an excellent flying experience. As a lot of you know, when you get on them and you're flying on the 787-9s of Air New Zealand, it's an exceptional service. The 777s, the new ones. And it's a great way for our visitors to be coming down to NZ, onboard new aircraft with all new entertainment systems and enjoying a good flight, so they're already on the front foot when they get here. Wellington has the Canberra-Singapore service, which is going well. So as I said, we're seeing a lot of new services. Now North Asia is always the interesting one. We've got Osaka back online with 3 services today, Korean Air Charters coming into Auckland in January. Greater China with Hong Kong Airlines is coming on daily services starting in November. Air New Zealand's upping the frequency into Shanghai. Again, and as we all know, there's never an ending supply of Chinese airlines that are looking to fly to New Zealand, and we've got 2 that are working pretty hard. They're not confirmed, and then there's some others sitting in the wings. But again, a lot of them looking, and we'll see what eventuates out of that. And it's always a pretty dynamic market. And then we know with Christchurch, China Southern's increasing its services up to 5 a week. And it's really good to see Asiana looking to come back into the market with charters. So that's confidence in the Korean market. The Korean market's going gangbusters, so it's good to see capacity, and it was always a capacity-driven market. So once again, it's just confirming what we've sort of seen in that underserved market area from our markets around the world. So the airlines are starting to jump into that space and fill them. You can't forget, though, Australia is still by far and away our largest market. And that's been growing consistently across the year. Yet if you have a look at North Asia, the Americas, and what we've seen coming online. I think a really good example has been this July, just out of North America with United and American and in New Zealand upping the services, and we've had a jump, I think, of 30+% and North Americans returning to NZ, which is fantastic. It's great to see. They're a good winter market. They like coming down and playing in our having a winter holiday. And I guess just a sense check of where we are. We're tracking ahead of forecasts, and again we have fairly ambitious growth targets heading out to 2025. We're sitting in a good spot, but like I said, if you have a look at I guess the next slide there, we're under service, but we need 13,000 extra services to hit those targets in the future if we're going to get there. And I think it might have been Matt talking about yesterday, sort of an incremental approach to how we're doing it. And sure, we've had a catch up in terms of capacity, but we need that to be steadily building because we need to get those airlines performing. They need to be profitable. You have demand, you meet demand, and then you grow the market and you keep moving up and making sure that value chain as it moves up is met. And then if we have a more strategic approach like that, sure, we've had express growth and we'll probably see a bit more of that happening, but once we get those airlines working, then we have a nice strategy. I think the industry is in a great place in terms of the thinking collectively around how we actually strategically approach what we're doing, because to be honest, if you have a look at what we are as a country in terms of a tourism destination, we're probably well placed to be one of the best strategically managed destinations on the planet. And it doesn't necessarily mean that 5 million visitors could be the number. It could be more if it's well planned and it's managed. I think New Zealand has a lot of empty spaces. There's plenty of places out there that are still free from anyone, and it just depends, I guess, how we look at how we cut and slice things and have that strategic development as an industry with a collective voice and a collective direction. I think will be sensational, and we should grab it with both hands because the way things, we're in an ideal place. We're probably in the best purple patch I can remember in terms of generally any time in the industry. We have a strong portfolio of markets. We're getting less reliant on particular market, whether it's a North Asian market. We have really nice growth across everywhere, so long may it remain, and let's work hard to make sure it does. So just in summary, we're underserved, and we've seen that. Airlines are adding capacity. Last year we were about 12% up, and we're probably across the year coming, it's going to be about 10% again. And more visitors coming, heading towards that 5 million by 2025. In a nutshell, that's that.